One of the true breakout players of the 2021 season has been Cooper Kupp of the LA Rams. Over the past 2 years, Kupp was averaging roughly 1,000 yards and right around 6 or 7 touchdowns. So far this season, Kupp is blowing up his previous records. Through 15 games, he's amassed over 1,700 yards and 14 scores. This is one of those seasons where a wide receiver might be able to win Offensive Player of the Year. This is actually surprising because over the past 25 years, a wide receiver has only won this award once. That player was Michael Thomas during his 2019 campaign. The last receiver to win this award before him was Jerry Rice all the way back in 1993. If you were to compare how Kupp is playing this year to how Thomas played back in 2019, Kupp has actually gained more yards and more touchdowns. This is even more impressive when you consider that Kupp still has 2 games left in the regular season. Now obviously a true comparison would only include one of those because of the expanded schedule, but the point is clear. Kupp is having an incredibly productive season so far. Honestly, outside of Kupp, there's only one other player I'd consider for this award. That player is Jonathan Taylor, the running back from the Colts. Now last week, I actually broke down Jonathan Taylor and discussed how he's tearing apart defenses in Frank Reich's scheme. In this one, I wanted the same for Cooper Kupp. We'll look at how he's playing, how Sean McVay used him in his offense, and I also want to give my reasoning on why I think Kupp and not Jonathan Taylor should be this season's Offensive Player of the Year. Before we do that though, if you can do me a huge favor and like and subscribe to this channel, I'd greatly appreciate that. So to start us off, let's look at some advanced stats. This is so we can compare how Kupp is playing on the field to some of the other receivers around the NFL. Here is Cooper Kupp's yards per route run. As you can see, he is right at the top of this chart at an outstanding 3.13. For those that don't know, yards per route run is a metric that measures efficiency while the receiver is on the field. Receivers that get targeted more because they're more consistent at catching and more consistent at creating separation are more likely to create more yards. On the season, the average receiver has created just about 1.5 yards per route run. Kupp is dominating the stat. He's creating more than double the yards per route run than your average receiver. Compare that to a DeMarcus Robinson or a Robbie Anderson. Neither are playing that well. Additionally, I also added Michael Thomas's yards per route run from the 2019 season. He actually led the entire NFL in this metric that year, but he still created less yards per route run than Cooper Kupp has so far. Now obviously with any metric, this isn't a perfect stat. Having a bad quarterback could be an issue. If your targets simply aren't good, then you'll likely be lower in this chart than you should be. However, this is still a very good metric for comparison. Kupp being so dominant speaks volumes to him as a player. To further break this down, here are some metrics from Pro Football Focus and Next Gen Stats. As I said before, Kupp is killing it in yards per route run. He's number 1 of 118 receivers with 25 or more targets. The same can be said for his ability against man coverage. He's currently first of 35 receivers that have more than 25 targets against man. Now against zone, the story is the same. He's actually second against this coverage and he's only behind Devontae Adams. On top of that, when you look at drop rate and yards after the catch over expected per reception, Kupp is doing well too. He's at 38th and 23rd respectively. These stats that I just showed tell a very compelling story. The film also backs that up. Let's look at an example. This play happened against the Cardinals in week 14. The Rams were lining up at their own 37-yard line. It was 2nd and 5 in the middle of the first quarter. The Rams are in shotgun and they motion Odell Beckham Jr. into the backfield. Seeing this motion and no corresponding trail from the defense, this is a pretty good tell that the Cardinals are in zone coverage. They're actually in cover 4. This means that Kupp's out route to the sideline will give him a one-on-one against his defender. Since Robert Alford was attempting to sit over the top of this route, he's pretty much playing in an off-man situation here. His goal is to bracket Kupp with the help of the boundary side safety while using the sideline to help protect against anything deep. This means that if Kupp can threaten deep then cut horizontally, there's a window for this throw. I want you to watch Kupp's route closely. Watch how he stems his route to scrape the cornerback, and then how he uses excellent footwork at the top in order to create separation. This is a perfectly run route. He accelerates outside to wind the quarterback, he then slows down and does a double jab step move to force the defender to drive on the deep portion of the route, and then Kupp drops his hips and cuts outside. Stafford sees this, and he places a well-thrown ball carrying him to the sideline. This play gained 13 yards. Stems like these are all over Kupp's film. What's impressive is not only how he attacks a defender in off coverage, is that how he can use the same against press man too. Watch this play against the Giants back in week 6. Before the snap, Kupp is lining up as a slot receiver to the open side of the field. In this alignment, Jabril Peppers is covering him from this position. On this play, Kupp runs another out route attacking the right side of the field. Since it's a flood concept run by the offense, the quarterback will read this play from high to low looking for who's open. He'll see that the go route is covered well, so Kupp is the natural place to throw this pass. All Kupp has to do is get open. After the snap, Kupp squares up his defender and quickly accelerates inside. He then uses a downward swipe with his right arm to fight off any contact as he starts his route. Since Peppers wasn't expecting the vertical of his release, Kupp is already long gone. Peppers attempts to get on his hip, but Kupp is too fast. Kupp quickly stacks the strong safety, and by the time he reaches 10 yards down the field, he can create the three-way go. Kupp then puts his foot in the ground, flattens his route with a speed cut outside, and then he accelerates to catch his pass for a 30-yard gain on the play. The thing about Kupp is that it's not just that he has a skill set to win one-on-one. Yes, he has the route ability to stack a defender. Yes, he has the hand-fighting skills to keep his frame clean. But more importantly, Kupp is very smart. He knows where the holes in each coverage are, and he knows how to make himself available for the quarterback. The Rams love using him all over the middle of the field on short routes like you normally see from a tight end. He'll find space between zones, and he'll quickly accelerate out of his catch to pick up yards on the ground. He's also amazing at contorting his body to adjust to his targets. Some of Stafford's passes weren't in the best place, but Kupp still brought them in anyways. He makes himself a very catchable target, and his tracking down the field on over routes or on deep passes like wheels up the sideline is something that showed up all over his film. It's clear that Kupp has developed into a well-rounded receiver. What's interesting is that the Rams are very open to using him in any function of their offense. Not only does he line up outside or inside as a slot receiver, but he'll also play as a tight end in this offense too. They'll bring him inside to block on their duo runs, but he'll also sit underneath and leak into the second level to play as a check down for the quarterback. On top of all that, they'll even use him as a running back lining up in the backfield. Seeing him torch an underneath curl flat or hook roll defender is a thing of beauty. What's amazing about all these alignments and how they motion and shift him around is that they can use this to give the quarterback an easier read on the defense. If they motion him inside as a tight end, does a cornerback trail, or do they use a linebacker on him on that spot? This tells us that the defense is a man or zone. So not only can Kupp make incredible plays on a consistent basis, Sean McVay knows how to maximize his talent. This explains a lot of his production this season. Honestly, it's a match made in heaven, and from an X's and O's perspective, I really think other coaches really need to take a note. In my opinion, losing Robert Woods was definitely painful, but if they lost Kupp instead, it realistically would have been much worse. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this video, I believe that Cooper Kupp should be this season's Offensive Player of the Year. I showed that by yards per route run, that Kupp is already outproducing Michael Thomas, who is the only wide receiver who has won this award over the last 25 years. With that being said, I also want to show how Cooper Kupp is playing his position as compared to Jonathan Taylor's with his. As we don't have a true one-to-one comparison, this is probably the best we can do. So first off, we have on our screen how these two players are doing at their own respective metrics. For example, I believe that yards per route run is a great metric for wide receivers. I feel the same in using rush yards over expectation for running backs. I think both stats do a great job of telling how good a player is. As I said earlier, Kupp is currently the #1 receiver in the stat. Jonathan Taylor is also performing at this level as compared to the other running backs too. He's #1 in rush yards over expected by a good margin. What's interesting is that while Kupp is playing better than Michael Thomas did in 2019, Taylor is actually playing better than that stat than Derrick Henry did in 2020 when he won this award. Now obviously this stat isn't everything, but it does show that both these players are playing extremely well. The next thing I want to show is expected points added. In this metric, Cooper Kupp is averaging more on his targets in the Rams offense than Jonathan Taylor is averaging on his attempts with the Colts. Kupp is averaging 0.38 expected points added per target, while Taylor is only averaging 0.09 per attempt. When you look at the top 50 wide receivers and top 50 running backs by usage, Kupp is 4th among wide receivers, while Taylor is 2nd when you look at the other running backs. So really the difference in expected points added by these two players, it comes down to positional value. According to this model, wide receivers are more valuable than running backs because on average, they create more yards per attempt. To account for this is the reason why I included the overall ranking. I think this tells an important story too. The final comparison I'm going to make is the one that I'm going to say has the biggest asterisk. I know people have mixed feelings on Pro Football Focus and their grading system, and really the only reason why I included the following was just because I couldn't really think of another peer comparison. By grade and according to them, Kupp is having the better season. However, by position, they're both clearly at the top of their group. Now, as a side note, I also included WAR or wins above replacement. According to PFF, they believe that a top receiver is more valuable to a team in producing wins than a running back is for their offense. They use the same logic that was used in expected points added. While I tend to agree with this, the award is Offensive Player of the Year and not Most Valuable Player. This is the reason why a quarterback will almost always win MVP. Regardless, I wanted to include this stat just so we can talk about it anyways. Now, I know that last screen wasn't a definitive guide. Honestly, both these players are playing so well this season that I completely get why it's a toss-up. So if you disagree with the following conclusion, don't worry, I completely get it. So with that being said, for me personally, I'm going to pick Cooper Kupp for Offensive Player of the Year. My reasoning for this all comes down to scheme versatility. I think Kupp is more of a matchup threat for his team than what Jonathan Taylor does for his. I think that's a very important aspect of a team strategy. The fact that Kupp can line up as a wideout, a slot receiver, a tight end, and as a running back out of the backfield to take advantage of various defenses, I think this is all very impressive. That's in contrast to how the Colts are using Jonathan Taylor. Taylor doesn't play a ton on the Colts passing downs. They have Nyheim Hines for that role in their offense. Again, this isn't a slight on Taylor, who is absolutely crushing it as a pure runner, but for me personally, the versatility is very important. Again, this is just my opinion, and I could also argue the other side too. Regardless, and as I said before, Kupp's skill set offers a ton of value to his offense. How he stems his routes, how he uses good hand-fighting technique and quickness to stack opposing defenders, and how he can make crazy catches with awesome body control over and over again, this is all really inspiring. If I was coaching an offense and I wanted to show an example of how you can maximize a player's talent, I would look no further than Cooper Kupp. Sean McVay really has done a great job of putting him in a great position to make plays. It'll be very interesting to see how teams will try to defend that skill set and his usage in the future. Well, that's all I have for you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great New Year's celebration, and please do me a favor and like and subscribe to this channel. Also, if you want to support me directly, follow the link to my Patreon account below. Thanks again, and feel free to find me on Twitter at SamuelRGold.